Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Furaha here with another video. I am so excited to be back. As I promised, I said I would be back on this channel soon with lots of different content, and I'm so thankful to have another day where I can come and share with you guys. For those of you who are new, I make Christian-based content here on YouTube, and from time to time, whenever I feel God is leading me to come on here and share something, I often pop up and share an encouragement, a scripture, a specific word that God has given me, whether it's prophetic or not. And today, as I shared last time, I really felt God lead me to actually tell you guys a story. So I'm going to start a new series on this channel, just basically called Storytime. So this is the story of how God told me to quit my job. And it's actually exactly 2 years ago, I felt God's leading to leave my previous job where I was working as a center manager for a Christian charity, running a really incredible place called Millside Center based where I live, and we were helping lots of vulnerable people, including asylum seekers and refugees, young people, homeless people, and just incredible, working in partnership with amazing organizations. And so I thought, every time I tell this story to friends, they're like, but how did you know that God was really telling you to leave your job? So I want to just really film a short story of, I guess, just the timeline of what happened in that season, and I guess just in a way of hoping that this encourages you. Maybe there's someone watching this video who is in a season of transition and they're not really sure what to do or how to steward that season of transition. And so I really hope that this video will really encourage you, that it will lead you closer to God. So here we go. So first things first, how did I know God was nudging me to leave my job? So we have to we have to backtrack. So basically, in 2022, around January, every year at the beginning of the year, I tend to start my year praying and fasting and just basically seeking God for the year ahead, asking God, like, what is it that you want me to focus on, and where do you want me to go, and who should I connect with, or who should I not connect with, basically trying to just get like a vision board from God. And I always say this, I have this saying that God is my CEO, and like my biggest strategy is the fact that I walk with God, and the fact that I can talk to God and hear what he has to say and tune my ears to really know which direction I should go. And so as I began to pray and fast, I really sensed, that maybe about 3 months before January, I already kind of began to sense that there was a sense of discomfort where I was working, not necessarily about anything that was going on there, but I just felt like every time God is about to shift me or uproot me from a place, he starts to kind of prepare me or warn me in advance. So I could feel something in my spirit that, something's gonna happen soon. Again, it's really hard to explain this in words, if you've never felt this, but I guess a sense of it was just whenever I would pray and I would seek God, I just knew something was gonna shift. And so in January, when I began to pray, the only thing God told me about was that in June, I just began to see something significant, something important was going to happen in June. And at the time, I didn't know what it would be. It was just like, I just saw June written in really big letters. And as I was praying, kind of like a vision. And but again, as I began to pray and continue to seek God, I was like, okay, God, what is this to do? Is this to do with my family, my relationships, and what specifically? And the more I would pray, beyond January, and now I began to go into the year and would go back and, really have some intense time of intercession and prayer, really seeking God deeper in terms of understanding what exactly that was, the shift and the change was going to entail. And the more I prayed, the more it became apparent that it was something to do with my job. And so at the time I was like, oh no, I'm really comfortable here, like I really love my job and I love the people I work with and I'm so content. And but then you know, it's that place of comfort is where sometimes, you know, we can get really comfortable and just not want to go when God wants us to go, and we don't want to overstay our welcome somewhere when God has something else for us ahead of us, and we miss it because we're too comfortable somewhere. So I think the first thing God really nudged me on was he just started convicting me about, so it was conviction. He started convicting me about the fact that I guess just how much I had made my job an idol. And it was really hard because I felt like I was really in a pruning season, and he began to highlight specific things of why what I was doing that was basically taking his rightful place. You know, I had put my job on such a pedestal, and as much as I was doing good work, which I felt was also kingdom building work, he really started telling me how much I had began to put those things above him. And you know, anything that we put above God is an idol. And so what happened is, as I began to pray and really, I guess, just ask for repentance in that season as well, you know, God called me to a retreat. So here we are. Number one, it was a conviction. I just felt it in my spirit. And the other thing I forgot to share is that I was actually reading a book, which is ironic now looking back, because it was a book that was given to me by it was given to me by my then manager, or kind of, let's say, the CEO of this charity, as a Christmas gift just before January, to say, hey, like, I think you'll really enjoy reading this book. And it was The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And so I finally picked up that book. I think he gave me that book a year prior, actually, and I finally picked up that book that year. And as I began to read through that book, like, you know, God can speak to us in so many different ways, through dreams, visions, you know, through other people. But for me, when the conviction started coming in and about how my work had become an idol, this book was really like hitting the nail on the head in terms of just how much my life had become so hurried and so fast-paced, and I really saw how detrimental that was to my health and well-being, to my mental health, to my spiritual health, and essentially just how I showed up in my other life, and how I showed up in my life and so many other relationships and friendships that I had. And so yeah, so once the conviction came in, you know, I really sensed God call me. The confirmation, the second thing was God. I was seeking God. I was like, God, right, okay, so you're calling me to leave my job, but I really need you to confirm that this is really you speaking. Because how many of us know that, you know, a lot of times we think we're hearing God, we think we know everything is aligning, but only to realize that actually it's all just, you know, maybe we're moving in our emotions, and we're moving in our own desires and our fleshly motives. But actually, once I began to seek God, you know, as it says in the scriptures, you know, God reveals secret things to those who seek him in the secret places. And so I think as I began to really go deep, and I would do like a day of fasting, or I would just spend a specific day and pray specifically that God will reveal to me things, and I was really intentionally asking God, please speak to me through anybody. So I guess my spiritual antennae was very alert to just hearing and picking things up from what God was going to tell me. And so so I actually remember that God called me to go on a retreat in Glasgow. Very random. I would just wake up and I would hear Glasgow in my mind, and I kept saying, God, what is this? And then eventually, when I finally clocked onto what God was saying, he began to tell me, Furaha, I need you to come away with me. You know, book some time off work and just come and spend some time away with me. So here I was, I'd booked this ticket, I was going to Glasgow, and to me, I was just going to go and have fun and, you know, be a tourist and actually just have some time of rest, because it was around April then. And so I'd had quite a full-on, like, a few months leading up to this time. And when I went to Glasgow, there I was pretending to be a tourist, or just, you know, having time on my own. But the whole time was so spirit-led. maybe this is another video for another day, because there's so much happened in those 3 days that I was in Glasgow. But one thing I want to highlight is, because I was seeking God for confirmation specifically for this answer, that, you know, he needed to let me know if really he was telling me to leave my job. I remember going to this church. So I have a friend who was at the time doing a PhD in Glasgow, so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, like, I'm around, you know. We met up, and then he invited me to his church that Sunday, and obviously I actually really wanted to go to church, so I went along. And here I was sat in this church, and the preacher was preaching, and I think it was actually Mothering Sunday, and in the middle of the service I hear this kind of instruction in my inner voice saying, at the end of the service, go and pray for the preacher. And I'm thinking, okay, God, I'm the guest here. How am I going to go and pray for a preacher who is, you know, obviously up there at the front? But then, you know, one thing I've learned about my faith walk is obedience is better than sacrifice, even when it doesn't make sense. So the service ended, I went up and approached the preacher. She was really approachable, and also kind of like similar age to me, so it was really encouraging to see her like, you know, using her gifts for God to build God's kingdom. And so I went and I said, hey, can I pray for you? I really feel like I should pray for you. And I prayed for her. I don't remember what I said, but then afterwards they had food, people were eating and enjoying Mothering Sunday together. And she said, hey, before you leave, you know, come, I'd love to pray for you as well. So I was like, absolutely. The end of the service comes, she comes up to me and she starts praying for me, and I hadn't told her not much about what was going on at the time in my life. And, you know, prophetically God spoke through that woman. In fact, she is actually Baile. I think if you're watching, you know this is you. I met her at that church, and we kept in touch, and we shared our contact details, and I've kept in touch since. And so she prayed for me, and she just said, you know, oh, I really sense that you're in a season of transition. And that's when I knew, okay, God's about to say something to me here. And so she said, you know, I don't know what God is telling you to do, but I just feel like you need to take a leap of faith and just follow him, and he will direct your steps. So, and as she said that, and she said 2 other specific things which were a confirmation to the things that God had already been speaking to me about. And so that confirmation, that what she said was so timely, because I was already in a season where I was like, okay, God, I need one more confirmation, and then I know exactly what I'm going to do. So just that one simple encounter with this woman in this church turned into an actual God-sent moment for me, where I knew without a shadow of a doubt, okay, this is it. I'm fully jumping in the deep end here for you, Jesus. I'm going to follow you even if it doesn't make sense. And so that night when I was praying, God specifically told me the date that I should hand in my resignation letter. He told me then and there that, you know, the next thing I should do is to actually book a ticket and go to Congo and spend time on a sabbatical. Basically book 3 months out and just be on a sabbatical, not working, not looking for a job, not doing anything, but just being a human being, just being with him. And he gave me an instruction to rest and to heal. But I think that part, I'm going to definitely come back. The second part of this video, I would love to talk about the lessons that I learned in being in a rested place and being in a place of sabbatical, and just how incredibly impactful and life-changing that was for me. And so that was the confirmation. So I had a conviction when God was nudging me that something was coming, and I really, you know, heard him speak to me through dreams, but specifically through a book that I was reading that I talked about, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And then I, you know, sought God even more in prayer and fasting for confirmation. And once it began to confirm and spoke to, specifically through this woman in Glasgow, I knew that that was it. And so the last thing really that I knew I needed to do after hearing all these things was to have confidence, to trust God, to trust that he will go before me, and that he would look after me, and he would provide everything that I needed. And so that was it. It was obedience. It's like, okay, so you've heard all these things, but are you really going to be obedient? Because I believe a lot of us, you know, we hear God. God is constant. The thing is, God is always speaking to us, whether we pay attention or not. He's always speaking to us. But the real answer is, are we listening? And if we are listening, we could listen, you know, we could hear, we could have all the instructions, everything lining up saying, go in this direction. But if you do not take that leap of faith and actually follow him, actually, you know, that is still disobedience. Because, you know, people often use the term obedience is better than sacrifice. But I really believe that obedience is the next thing that I would say, for me personally, unraveled a deeper level of faith and trust in God than I've ever experienced before. So that is the story of how I left my job, because I felt God was calling me, and God specifically nudged me to leave my job. But I guess lastly, one thing to say is, you know, one thing that I wrestled with, I remember at the time, was that, you know, I was just constantly thinking about, but, you know, what will people say? You know, like, what are people are going to think I'm crazy for leaving my job, and I'm, you know, doing great things, and I'm making an impact in my community. And a lot of people would come up to me and think, Furaha, why are you leaving your job? Where are you going? And I would just say, I don't know. I had no answer. I didn't know what I was going to do next, you know, and God specifically gave me an instruction not to look for another job. I even remember talking to my brother and telling him, hey, this is the plan, this is what I think God is telling me. And my brother, who, bless him, loves the Lord, and I absolutely, you know, is in, you know, very, very wise, and I always trust his judgment and his wise counsel. You know, he was like, I believe you're listening to God, but you might need a backup plan, because in this economy, you can't just quit your job and disappear and just hope for the best. Like, you might need to start looking for other things, and, you know, updating your CVs and putting yourself out there. And I just said, hey, like, bro, I love you with all my heart, but I want to obey God, and it doesn't make sense even to myself. It's not going to make sense to everybody. What God speaks to you, especially when it's something as big as making a big move, or leaving your city, or changing career, or, you know, sometimes even choosing a spouse, or, you know, God brings someone in your life that doesn't make sense. But, you know, I think always remembering that we do not conform to the patterns of this world, but God calls us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that's a scripture in Romans 12. Verse 2. And so it's very easy for us to be swayed, to be to basically allow other people's opinions of how our life should pan out to influence how we live on a day-to-day. I mean, the only person who we should care about pleasing is God. We should not care about people's approval. And yes, we don't do anything, you know, for human, you know, applause. We don't do anything so we can be seen or recognized. But as Christians, as believers, I really believe that God often will call us into a season where we have to really trust him. Like, even especially when we are people pleasers. And I'm someone who, I call myself a recovering people pleaser, because I used to get so paralyzed worrying about what people would think about what I would say and do, and my reputation, and what if this goes wrong, and, you know, all this, like, you know, comparison culture that we live in, always worrying about what everyone else will think, but the one who created you, but God who made heaven and earth, but God who already mapped out our whole lives and is so sovereign. So I want to encourage you, maybe you're in a season where you're thinking, okay, I feel like God is calling me to do this, but I don't know what my family are going to think, and I don't know what my friends are going to say about this, and so on. But, you know, seek God, but obviously make sure you heed the convictions that God give you, and obviously test everything you hear. You know, go to your spiritual leaders and seek their wisdom, ask them to pray for you. And I remember one thing I actually did during that time is I actually had a meeting with two leaders in my church, you know, the pastor and the assistant pastor of my church, and I explained to them what I was going through, and they prayed with me. So I would say, you know, do this in in the comfort of wise counsel, get people to pray with you and to discern whether this is the right thing to do. And obviously godly counsel is invaluable in our walk with Christ, and obviously seek God's confirmation. Ask him to reveal to you things, you know, whether it's through dreams, through other people, through a book or a film, or just on your walk with him, and he drops those like nuggets in your spirit. And lastly, you know, only remember that the only approval that we're after as believers is Jesus, and Jesus looking down on us. If God himself is pleased with us, that's all that matters. And so that's all that I wanted to share with you guys today. So this is part 1 of my story time video. I hope this encouraged you, and please share below. I'd love to hear, you know, what is a recent journey that God has called you to that has been scary, but you have had to you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. And so in the next episode, I will be sharing, I guess, you know, 5 lessons that I learned in that season of Sabbath, and then we'll move on from there. But I'm really looking forward to coming back on this channel and sharing some of my stories, and for those of you who know me know that I can talk for Africa, but I do love storytelling, and I think there is so much power in our stories, our journeys, and our lessons, the lessons we learn along the way to encourage each other and yeah, to make us feel connected. So I hope this encourages you, and I'm praying for you. And if you are in a season where you feel like you're really struggling with a decision you're about to make, and you'd love someone to come alongside you and to pray with you and to support you, or just, you know, uplift you, please, I'll drop my email in the description box below, so please do reach out. I would love to hear from you. And yes, have a great rest of the week ahead, and see you soon. Lots of love. Mwah. Peace.